بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. My dear respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And this is the third lesson in the lesson of the book of purification from the Hadrami introduction. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us and you with the knowledge that this Imam has left. Last time we spoke about the najasa, aspects of najasa and some concessions related to najasa, and we mentioned the whole concept of the qullah, the qullatain, which makes a distinction between little and large water. And I mentioned that the qullah is like a big vessel. In the past they had like a clay vessel which is made to hold water. It's like almost like a big jar, and that was an indication from the Prophet ﷺ, and when he said إذا بلغ الماء قلتين لم يحمل الخبث, if the water reaches the amount of 2 qullah, then it is not going to carry the khabath, it's not going to carry any impurity, and we explained that last time. So he said, if the water is 2 qullah, then it doesn't become impure if any impurity falls in it, unless it changes its taste, its color, or its smell, even if insignificantly. So when you have a large amount of water and something falls into it, a najasa, if the water stays, doesn't change, then it is still tahir to use. Okay? Or whatever hukum it had before. If it changes any one of the 3 characteristics, then it is no longer tahir to use, cannot be used, but also it is najis as well, on top of that. However, it says, if the change fades by itself, or with the addition of more water, it becomes pure. So if the what my Shaykh told me, and in talking, it's obviously, and maybe here we don't have as much application, but in the sort of mountain lands, you have like sometimes these sort of like almost like small rooms, like caves, small rooms where a lot of water gathers from the different sources, whether it's rain or whatever. So he said usually what happens a lot of time, the sheep and the goats which are herded there, they will go and drink from this water, but they'll also they'll also pass their stools. So this stool or the urine is going to make the water najis, okay, the small stools. But he said what happens is with time the stools and all the najasa goes to the bottom, and so actually the water remains at the top, remains quite clean. So here basically this is what he's saying, is that if with time the najasa fades away or it subsides, then that will make it remove that impurity. Or if we had water which is less than 2 qullah, okay, and I'll mention how much a qullah is in a minute. We had, say, a bucket of water and a small bit of najasa fell into it. If it's less than 2 qullah, it's going to become najis regardless of whether it changes or not. Yeah? So if we then added more water to this water such that it becomes more than 2 qullah, now it's all going to be tahir. So obviously that practical application comes when you are in a desert, when you have lacking water. So even a small amount of water you don't want to waste, you have some more water. So you say, okay, let's add that to the whole quantity, and that allow us to use it. However, with adding musk or cloud of earth, then it doesn't. If you add some misk to the water, your intention is to hide the smell. Okay, this addition will not make it tahir. Nor if you added earth, turab, to try to cloud any color change or whatever. Again, this, because we said when you start to add things to the water, you are interfering, it no longer has the quality of being the water that it was before. And here he said the flowing is like the stagnant. So whether you have a stagnant puddle or pool, or whether you have some flowing water, and by flowing water here it means a small amount of water, like a small stream. So if a small stream is passing and there's like a pile of najasa, impurity, and the stream is passing this, so as it passes by, the water after it you might see it's changed color or whatever, so it has the same ruling. Some people mistakenly think that any flowing water is tahir. No, it will depend as well about the quantity, and also depend on what qualities are being changed. But this is to distinguish from what we said last time, which we said that the mud, a turab, which is in the path of water, this is okay. That's not going to change because that's natural. But when it becomes a najis, something najis or whatever, that's going to affect it. Now, what is 2 qullah? 2 qullah basically is effectively equal in the old measurements. It's equal to if you imagine a cube, a box. Each side of the cube, they say, is equal to 1 arm's length and a quarter. So 1 arm's length and a quarter. Now, the Hashimi arm's length is considered as measured as 48 centimeters. So 1 arm's length is 48, and this appears in some of our fiqh, as we will read later on, inshallah, especially when we talk about the sutra in salah and the distance and etc. So here in this concept, 1 arm's length and a quarter is going to be 48, and a quarter is 12, so it is 60. So 60 centimeter cubed is what is equivalent to 2 qullah. So when you do the maths, it adds up to 200, or it multiplies up to 216 liters. 216 liters is the approximate amount of the 2 qullah. Okay, I don't know how that is in. Is that like a bath full of water? How much is a bath? Abu Ayman, you know these calculations.
Probably about 60 gallon maybe.
No, but in how many liters? Yeah.
Liter, multiply by 4.
Okay, so about 240.
Yeah.
So around that much, yeah. Okay, but anyway, when you think about 60, isn't that 60 is about, this is the length of 60. So if you're thinking about cube, and it's not going to be it's not a large amount, basically. Okay, so this is related to the dimension. Also, he adds here that it is prohibited, so it's haram to use for tahara. This is a type of water that you can't use for tahara. Water which has been dedicated to the drinking needs of the wayfarer. What we know as ma al-musabbal, ibn sabil. So somebody has dug a well as a waqf or as a sadaqah, and he has dedicated this only for drinking. Okay, drinking for people who are musafir. So it is haram to come and use this water to make wudu. Alright, because the waqf intention is for the drinking, not to be used as wudu. Now, next section is about asserting judgment. If confusion has arisen regarding pure water and impurified, then one has to make a good judgment, and then purifies with that which he suspects the purity. So if you had like 2 buckets of water, and they were both tahir, okay, they are both clean, but then you suspected that one of them became najis by something happening, either by maybe a dog entered the room and you saw the dog come out with wet mouth, so you know that the dog has gone in and he's drank some of the water, or maybe something has fell into the water, and you know that one of them is najis, but then when you came back you forgot which one is it, this one or this one. So here, when you have this doubt, you have to make your judgment, ijtihad. You have to make your judgment about which one you think is the tahir and which one you think is the najis, rather than just obviously going blindly and just doing either. So this might be according to a sign or according to some sort of so you do your best. Maybe you saw like that one of the buckets is less in water, so you know, okay, that one's the one that's been drunk in. Or maybe you saw a hair from something, or maybe you noticed whatever sign you can. So it is ijtihad that you're going to make, and then you're going to do obviously the tahara with the one that you suspect is the tahir. Even if you're not 100% sure, as long as you do the ijtihad and you have some sign, then it is acceptable to do that. However, if you have no sign at all and you can't, and you're totally baffled, I don't know which one is that. So here you can't use either. Yeah? Because if you think about, some people might say, okay, let me do wudu with both of them. No, well, if you do with both of them, you're going to be effectively doing wudu with one of them, which is najis. So say you did with the najis, and then you did with the tahir. Okay, maybe that's going to wash, yeah? But what if you did with the tahir first, and then you did with the najis? It's not going to work. Or, if they both together, if you mix them together, they are more than 2 qullah, that's fine. But if they're less than 2 qullah, it's going to be problematic. So, what do you do in this case? If this is the only water you have, and you need to pray, tayammum. But before you do tayammum, what they say is that you have to effectively get rid of the water. Why? Because tayammum, فَلَمْ تَجِدُوا مَاءً. The Quran says you cannot find water. Now you have water, okay? So tayammum it doesn't apply yet. So maybe you're gonna either give it to, if you have an animal, this is all based on you living in the village, as you can see. Either you give it to an animal or you put it in the garden or whatever. In him you have to get rid of the water. So now you say, I don't have water, so now I do tayammum. This is in contrast to if you have 2 items, 2 buckets, but one of them is tahir, mutahhir, means tahur, it's a pure water. The other one has been contaminated by something which is tahir. Okay? So it's not najis, but it is tahir. Maybe some orange juice, maybe some rose water, anything tahir, and you can't tell the difference. Here, you can make wudu with both, because one of them is going to be the water, the other one is going to be tahir. It's not going to affect you. You don't have any najasa on you as a consequence of this. All right. Also, if you can't make ijtihad, you can also ask somebody. Maybe you have somebody who has seen something, so you can also ask. And this all formulates an important principle in the general ahkam of the rules. So even, for example, when you come to the qibla, if you are outside, you have to make ijtihad to where the qibla is, okay? Because you can't just pray, you can't just say, I'll just pray wherever there, because some people will say, فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ, wherever you turn, then the direction is towards Allah. This is incorrect. You have to make your utmost ijtihad to face the qibla. Okay, but you do the ijtihad based on signs, the sun, the stars, the moon, the buildings, lots of signs. We'll come to it inshallah in due course. But then you make the ijtihad, or you might ask somebody who has some knowledge or some information or whatever. Any questions about that?
Shaykh, when you put rose water or the rose or the
Yeah.
orange, doesn't change the water, because we say if they change the color or the smell,
Yes.
so you can't do the wudu with the...
Yeah. So if it changes, you can't do the wudu. But here now you have one which is okay, one which hasn't changed, it's mutahhir, but one has been changed. But you don't know which one it is now, for whatever reason. Something has happened, maybe you can't smell it, you can't smell the change, you can't see the change. But you know definitely that one of them has that change. Yeah. Yes.
His question is the change happened with something fine, not
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
No, but you can't use it for wudu. You can't use it for wudu. So it's tahir, but you can't use it for wudu. Because last time, if you remember, we said the only thing that can be used for the wudu or for the removal of najasa is what can be considered as water. And it must be water. We cannot use something which is not water.
What if you don't know?
With these two,
Yeah, if you don't know.
yeah, so you're going to make ijtihad. We said ijtihad, but even if one of them is water and the other one is contaminated with something tahir, you can make wudu from both.
Yeah.
That's fine.
What if you don't know which one?
Doesn't matter.
If it's got najasa. and you don't
No,
know.
if it's najasa,
But if you don't know, you came and you saw them.
yeah, that's what I just said. So I said if you don't know, you make the ijtihad. If you don't know, you're gonna get rid of the water, and then you're gonna do tayammum. If that's the only water you have, then basically. Yeah. Okay. Next section is about using gold and silver. The ulama usually mention this in this section because it's related to the utensils for wudu. Yani what kind of bowl you use and things. So he said it's haram, it's prohibited to use gold or silver utensils except for necessity. Even if as small as an eyeliner vessel. Yani makhala, this where they put the kuhl, if it's made out of gold or silver, it's haram to use it. Okay? So any items which you are using gold and silver for eating, drinking, making wudu, whatever, as an item, it is haram to use. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned it specifically with regards to eating, but the ulama said, well, it extends to all usages. Unless it's for necessity. Necessity means that it's going to give us a reason. This also applies to what has been strengthened by gold. So sometimes you have something which has maybe a crack or something. Sometimes they'll add gold to strengthen it. So you should not use gold to strengthen an item. Okay? However, you can use something that has been strengthened by silver. And indeed the Prophet ﷺ had a cup which was made out of clay, and it was cracking at the top. So he made it strengthened with a silver rim at the top to allow extended usage of it. But the silver must not be a large amount, and just enough for the strengthening. Okay? Why is it haram, they said, to use gold and silver? Because they said gold and silver usually is a type of money. And it's a commodity people buy and sell. So if you are using it for your eating and drinking, it indicates a type of extravagance that you have. You know, you are so rich that instead of using this silver for buying and selling and some money, you are using it for. It's like somebody who, I don't know, gets 20 pound notes and then he decorates his house wallpaper with 20 pound. No, it shows type of extravagance. You know, this money has other usage. Why are you using it for something like that? What about gold-plated or silver-plated items like a watch or maybe a pen or whatever? They said that it is, if the amount of gold is a lot, then it's haram. But if it is so insignificant that if we were to melt this gold, we will get something very, nothing. It's very little, and it's hardly. Then if it's insignificant, it is halal to use that as a gold, as a plated item. All right, and you might say, well, how do we know we're going to melt it? Or this kind of thing you can maybe ask an expert. You know, how much if we were to take the gold out of this watch, would it be worth it? And is it a lot? Or if he said, yeah, there's a lot of gold here, then it's going to be haram to use for the same reason as before. What about using gold for medicinal purposes?
Good to see.
Huh?
Yeah, what about, I want to ask you that we have in our country, back home, they're making teeth from
Yeah.
silver and gold.
Yes.
Or just make a cover or whatever it is.
So again, for necessity, it is permissible. There was one of the Sahaba who his nose was cut off in the battle, so they made a nose for him from silver, but it kept on staining and corroding. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ permission. He allowed him to make a nose from gold. So he had a nose, like a prosthesis made out of gold, showing that is permissible. Now, today in dentistry, a lot of, in the past, and by past I mean like maybe 10 or 15 years ago, gold was very much used a lot as a material because it has good qualities. Gold is soft relatively.
Strength.
Well, it's soft in terms of, in the sense that it isn't abrasive, but also it doesn't corrode, like other materials, other metals. So it has good qualities. But what now really in a modern world now, modern times, there are materials which are better than gold, like ceramics, like even composites, different types of materials which are better than. So here the use of gold is redundant. Doesn't really in the past we say, okay, we're comparing between maybe gold and maybe a silver amalgam, this kind of different fillings, or then we say, yeah, okay, gold has a. But now that technology has moved on and there are superior qualities, then we say the gold was a necessity. Now we don't have a necessity, so it would go back to the original ruling, which is that it is haram. Okay? And it's more haram when people do it for show. Some people, they have this one here, they do it out of platinum, or they put sometimes diamonds in it, just to show, to show. Some people do it even though their tooth is nothing wrong with their tooth. They just do it just for, it's almost like a gangster kind of thing. You have that. So that is, not only now is using a haram material, but also in addition to this, they are showing off. And that's the whole point. You're not supposed to be showing off with.
What about the
In addition to that, there is something which is called libas al-shuhra, which is when somebody wears something just to be known amongst people. And he's known that he wears something just to make him stand out. This is also haram. So if you're going to stand out, the only guy who has a silver or a white, a gold tooth, then it's also the same thing. Yes.
They're using it now, gold in food.
Huh?
In food.
What leaf?
The food?
Yeah, on food.
Yeah.
They put it on cakes, they put it on meat, they cover it and sell it for
On meat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One paper.
Huh?
Yeah.
One
So-
paper.
So how is that?
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, same. If it's real gold, obviously it's haram.
No, but they're eating it. It's halal.
Why are they eating it? I don't know why they eat gold. Huh?
It's another one, you can't eat. It's like a paper made of wood,
Yeah.
and they put it in a cake.
Yeah, but is it?
It's a very thin layer of gold.
Very thin layer, very thin layer.
Yeah, but it's a thin layer. But it's not the gold. Can't be a gold metal.
No,
Can it?
this.
How would you eat a gold metal? It's
Maybe it's mixed with something. I don't know.
huh? I don't know. I have to research that. I haven't.
اكو طباخ تركي
Yeah.
اللي بالامارات شويه يحط عليه قطع عيش من ذهب على اللحم
هذا حقيقي.
وما ادري بعد هو شو اوف وشو اوفين.
I don't know how they will eat it because.
We don't know. We saw it in a video. They put some.
Yeah.
Also,
If people are doing it for show, and then you can move the gold, they remove the gold and eat. But to eat gold, I don't know, I never heard of eating. I know sometimes gold is used for medicine, even to take small amounts of gold, because it has certain effects. But obviously, this is also a type of arrogance, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
So what about the libas al-shuhra? Even was cheap. But
Huh?
if it's cheap, it also the libas al-shuhra, but just to make you different from people.
Yeah,
It's
same thing. So because the
Sometimes-
Prophet naha an libas al-shuhra. Yeah, and the idea of shuhra is not just about the value, expense, but it's about standing out. Yeah, and showing off and to be different from people. Because at the end of the day, you need to to show off amongst people is there's an element of kibr and arrogance and things like that. Okay, the next section is about toothbrushing and other acts. Toothbrushing, which is in Arabic, is a siwak. A common misconception amongst Muslims is that the word siwak, when you say siwak, they think it is the wooden brush. Okay, they say siwak is the wooden brush, and this is a common misconception. The word siwak, from an Arabic linguistic perspective, just means toothbrushing. Toothbrushing. So wherever you hear or read the word siwak in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, it means brushing your teeth. Okay, that's what it means. Now, when you think about that, therefore, the recommended acts related to that is all related to brushing your teeth, regardless of what you are going to use. We're going to talk about that. However, there are instruments or tools which are better than others, but the recommendation is for any type of toothbrush. So it's the act of brushing the teeth. It's the act of cleanliness. That's what is siwak. Okay? And so when you hear the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you'll find that he did siwak, brushed a lot of times. Okay? Today, dentists will tell you brush twice a day. Okay? Whereas in Islam, it tells you brush 10, 20 times a day. Lots of times. Yeah, it is something that is done regularly as a type of cleanliness. So it is recommended in all situations, and it is more emphasized for wudu, salah, and by salah for every ihram. The ihram is obviously the act of entering to salah, yani takbirat al-ihram. Our ulama, the Shafi'i ulama, they have very specific in this, because the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, لو لا أشق على أمتي لأمرتهم بالسواك عند كل صلاة أو قبل كل صلاة. So they said كل صلاة means every time you're going to do salah, and then it is recommended to do a siwak, to brush. Yeah. So he said even if you like praying tarawih, 20 rak'ah, for every ihram, it's recommended to brush your teeth before saying Allahu Akbar. So it's like a very linguistic application of the hadith. For wanting to read Quran, hadith or dhikr, when the teeth become yellow, so it's more emphasized to do that. When you are entering the home, when you're getting up from bed, for wanting to go to sleep, and for every occasion that the mouth changes. Okay, so it's all recommended in different situations, but more so in these scenarios. The only time it is disliked to do siwak is for the fasting person after az-zawal, meaning after the midday. Okay, after the entrance of dhuhr. This is like a ijtihad of Imam Shafi'i, also although based on some narrations from the Sahaba as well. And the reason why he said this, he said because a fasting person's mouth, smell of his mouth, is beloved to Allah in the hadith. أطيب عند الله من ريح المسك. So they said it's like an athar of ibadah. It's a consequence of ibadah. So it is disliked, not haram, disliked to remove this smell which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves. Okay, so that's the kind of ijtihad, and there are some evidences for this. Now, it is achieved by any rough item. So siwak, the sunnah of siwak, is achieved by any rough item except your finger. Okay, so with the exception of the finger, any other item, so even if you had your finger and you put on it a cloth, then that can be considered as siwak. Okay, so it is for any item, because they said your finger, linguistically is not a siwak, and it's like part of you. You can't, I think. Except maybe an exception for the finger is if you have no teeth. So if you have no teeth, you're not going to use a toothbrush. So you can't use your finger here. That's the only exception for the finger. Not that the finger is a siwak, but because if you used any other item, it's gonna damage your gums. The stick of arak, so here the arak stick, this is the best one. Okay? Why? Because that's what the Prophet ﷺ used to use in the main. Then that of a palm tree, a nakhl after that, because that was like, if you like, the second preference of the Prophet ﷺ. And then after that, a zaytun, shajar al-zaytun, because it is shajara mubarakah, as Allah mentions in the Quran. And then any other type. But subhanAllah, the arak is the most common use because it is the most practical one. The bristles that are formed from it is the easiest to use. The other ones, the bristles are not very good. Yeah, even for the date or the palm tree or the zaytun. It is recommended to brush with something dry, but you moisten it with water. And recommended to also brush the tongue as well. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ used to do this as well. Okay, so this is with toothbrushing. He said also it is recommended to use oil occasionally. Oil meaning on your hair. Again, sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ used to use oil, so much so that sometimes they will find oil on his clothes, and he used to put a lot of oil on his. Also to use kuhl, recommended to do it an odd number of times, 3 or 5 times the kuhl. To trim one's moustache, okay, so that your lips are showing, okay. To cut one's nails. There is a ulama recommendation of how to cut the nails, which is to start with the right pointing finger. They said because this is the ashraful asabi', okay, because with this finger you point to the shahada, and then you go around like this, and then as if you are making a connection like this, then you're going to go all the way around and then end here. Okay, now this is not based on a hadith, but it's almost like an opinion. And Imam al-Ghazali said, this direction is so, it's so clever. Let's say it almost seems that it must have been taken from the prophethood. فيها ريح النبوة to do this. However, this is just a recommendation to do that. Also recommended that when you do cut your nails, that you bury the nails. Okay, because it's a part of you, it's part of your body, and like any part of your body which has been, like when you die or anything has been cut off for you, it's recommended to bury those. So you have a small part in your garden, you can just bury it there as opposed to throw it away in the bin. And this includes anything, even your hair, whatever, to bury it. Also recommended to pluck the armpits with the wax or the like. To remove the pubic hair by shaving. To comb the beard. So again, if you have a beard, to look after your beard, don't leave it just messy. To dye the grey hair. Okay, recommended to dye it with red or yellow dyes, or any other color, but not black. Okay, so black is muharram. It's haram to use black unless in jihad. That's the only exception that the ulama say. Why? Because they said when you dye black, there's almost like a deception, a form of deception. You're making yourself look younger than what you really are. Then there's a form of disgenuinity, or disingenuous. And also the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, when they brought him the father of Abu Bakr, he came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said that his hair was like cotton. So the Prophet ﷺ said, غَيِّرُوا هَذَا وَاجْتَنِبُوا السَّوَادِ. Change this, but avoid the black. And obviously, you'll find that some ulama have, from different madhahab, where they said it's not haram, but it is disliked, and different opinions there. Or even some say it's disliked for the old man, but not for the young man. Because they're saying you see, even here they're measuring, they're saying Abu Bakr's father was very old. And when he came to the Prophet, he was maybe around 80 or something, very old. Doing it black would really have been, but if it was somebody young, somebody maybe who's 30, 40, still young, and there's no deception there. So the idea is all about deception. For the married woman, it's also recommended that she dyes her hands and feet with henna. So and it's a form of beautification if she wants to do that. Qaza' is disliked. What is qaza'? Yes, so it's حلق بعض الرأس وترك بعض. If you shave some of the head and leave some of it, that is called qaza'. Okay, to shave. So it here is disliked, not haram, it's disliked. And it's about shaving as well. Also it's disliked to pluck the grey hairs, to remove the grey hairs, and to pluck the beard as well. Also, some say it's disliked some people used to use sulfur, I don't know, like a flame, whatever, to get grey hairs. They want to get grey hairs quickly. Why would they do that? To make them look more wise with their grey hair. Huh?
Mature.
Yeah, mature. So also it has this, it's the same karahiyah. It's also disliked to do that. It's a form of deception, is it? To make you look a bit wiser and older than what you really are. It's also disliked to walk in one sandal. If you have one sandal, you should either both feet should be should be shoed, or you walk barefooted, but don't give one preference of one foot over another.
I've done it once.
You did it?
When I went to Mecca, so my once just lift one side. So I say, okay, the white marmar is good, to walk is cold.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
So when I went to the Shisamul Pir Zift, was boiling. So I put one on and just jumping in
hoping
to buy another one.
Yes, when I went to do the Hajj, I was waiting for the Jamarat to start, especially on the last day. It's very busy and everybody's waiting for Dhuhr time so that they can do it, so it's so much crowding, and then a lot of people bring their luggage with them because they're going to go as well. So I was there and there was so much pushing. At the end, when I came out, I found I was wearing different slippers. People take the slippers off. Okay, and also to wear your sandals, your hidha, whilst you are standing. It's makruh. Okay. As for just wearing one foot, they said, يعلمنا الإسلام العدل, to teach justice even with your feet. Okay, so you don't treat one foot better than the other. Okay, you're giving them both. It's a form of bigger message about justice. And standing, don't put your shoes while standing. He said, للإرشاد, meaning that it's like a form of, it's just like some advice the Prophet was giving, that because you're going to likely to fall down. Maybe you're trying to put your sandals and you end up fall, you'll hurt yourself. So it's a form of irshad. Okay, that's a lot of introduction to the tahara. We're going to, inshallah, next week we'll start about the obligations of wudu. So we talk about, you know, wudu obligations, talk about the sunnah of wudu and etc. Inshallah, that'll be next week.